Today marks 1 year since the Taliban regained control of Kabul. As the last American and NATO forces left the country 12 months ago, thousands tried to get out of the capital as the Taliban closed in. Some made it to the airport, trying to board any plane that would take them. The Taliban takeover came after months of rapid territorial gains that caught the Afghan government and its Western allies by surprise. Since then, they've presided over an economy in freefall. This has fueled one of the world's worst humanitarian disasters, as DW's Zandra Petersmann found out. A warning, the first images in this report are disturbing.
This is Shazia Bibi. She was born just before the Taliban returned to power. Shazia is trapped between two curses that challenge the best efforts of doctors here in Kabul trying to help her.
She is suffering from both severe pneumonia and severe malnutrition. Her pneumonia has actually caused her malnutrition. The prognosis of children like her with severe malnutrition is not very good, as their growth, development and intelligence may be affected.
Shazia's mother did not want to be filmed, but she told us she has 8 children and is pregnant with her 9th. There is never enough food at home, she said, and no money for medicine. Half of Afghanistan's people are experiencing acute food insecurity. That's 20 million people who are so hungry their lives are at risk. As we drive through Kabul, facts and figures become faces. This is one of the World Food Programme centers in the east of the city. The project manager of a local aid organization is in charge here. The worst part of the job, choosing who should get supplies.
It is exactly very difficult for us how to choose the right person over there. Many of them, they are hungry, many of them, they are in need, many of them, even they are running after us when we are doing the verification and selection. But we cannot do all. We cannot provide food for all.
Those he picks get 50 kg of wheat, just over 6 kg of lentils, and 5 liters of cooking oil. There are also packets of peanut butter paste for children and special nutrition for pregnant women. It's supposed to feed a family for 3 months. It hardly ever does. As the sky starts to darken over Kabul, we visit a bakery in the north. People with money buy fresh bread for dinner. Sometimes they buy extra for the desperate women who sit outside hoping for charity. Many of them are widows. Many have walked for more than an hour to get here.
We are forced to beg. Why else would we sit here all day? I take the bread home and I eat it with my children. But it's not enough to fill our stomachs. I divide the bread in pieces and give it to my children so that none of them dies. But our stomachs are never full.
Bakery owner Mirdel Rahmati has registered around 1,000 women for the bread donations. Only those with a card get a loaf. It's his way to try to help, but also to keep the situation under control.
I started this project out of a strong sense of patriotism because our people are jobless. The international community has stopped their assistance for us. We are forced to fight for our people and for our land.
Afghans are not only victims of massive aid cutbacks, but also of the sanctions against their fundamentalist rulers. Billions of dollars of national assets held abroad are frozen. Street markets continue, but the wider economy is collapsing. And the Taliban have no experience of serving millions of desperate people in crisis. Not a single country has recognized their regime. This pariah status is costing Afghans dearly.
That report by Zandra Petersmann in Kabul. I asked her, what's the way out of this dire situation?
There doesn't seem to be an easy way out. The trajectory is actually that the situation is getting more dire because right now the international community, namely the United Nations, are providing essential food items to about half the population, 20 million people. And they will have to continue to do that because the economy around us, despite the fact that there are still local markets, the wider economy is collapsing. An increasing number of people is jobless. We met a lot of people who are really very keen to leave the country, mainly fearing the economic downfall much more than the security situation. And I myself personally am wondering for how long the international community will be able to keep up this huge international humanitarian effort when you have a look around the world, because there are other crises ongoing as well, and Afghanistan might be one of those forgotten crises in the time to come.
And another issue there is this clampdown on women's rights. What sort of pushback has there been?
I mean, if you speak to women here yesterday, for instance, I spent the entire day with a young woman who used to be a top shot. She used to be a university student. She used to work in the presidential palace, and now she describes herself as a prisoner at home. She told us that under this regime, she doesn't want to continue her studies because of the curriculum changes and also because she simply can't afford to pay the private university that she was studying at. And if you look at the larger picture, you have a lot of women who are just scared to voice their true feelings, to voice their dissent. We were witness of a small demonstration on Saturday. About 40 women assembled in the front of the Ministry of Education demanding their right to work, their right to freedom, their right to food. And then what happened is the authorities here let them march on for about 500 meters, and then they started firing live shots, and that live shot situation lasted for about 30 seconds. The women were dispersed, and also a lot of journalists were arrested at the scene because they were bearing witness to this.
How are the Taliban marking today's anniversary, Zandra?
So far, it's a very calm and quiet day. They have declared today a national holiday, so the streets are really calm, eerily calm, I would say. Not a lot of traffic going on here. There is supposed to be something like an official ceremony at 2 p.m. local time, where we expect some speeches and maybe some prayer. That is supposed to happen at the National TV Hall. Whether or not there will be something like a parade going on or any other festivities in the streets remains to be seen, but one must say there are also a lot of security concerns because the last 14 days in particular saw quite a few blasts and saw a lot of victims, especially in the western part of town where the Shiite Hazara community lives, and there are security concerns for today because the Taliban are basically the rulers of this country, but there is still opposition to them from the National Freedom Front and also from the Islamic State here in Afghanistan, and supposedly the Islamic State has got some sleeper cells here in Kabul.
Zandra Petersmann, thank you very much for your reporting. Mary Ellen McGroarty leads the World Food Programme's efforts in Afghanistan. What is urgently needed right now, and what will really help?
Yeah, good morning. We urgently need to keep the foot on the very strong and largely scaled up humanitarian response. We still have unprecedented levels of food insecurity and malnutrition in Afghanistan that have never been seen before, almost 20 million people. So that...
Well, we've lost you there for a second, Mary Ellen. We're trying to get you back, but if you can still hear me, can you tell us how much longer the international community can keep up this huge aid effort? Because half the population, I believe, is in need of help, according to Zandra. How much longer can the international community keep up this effort?
I mean, we need to keep up this effort as long as it is required, and alongside that, we need solutions that bring us off the humanitarian peak. We need to stand by the people of Afghanistan today and tomorrow while they're in an absolutely dire situation.
Aid organizations have been worried about the misuse of contributions by the Taliban. How are you dealing with that?
Yeah, I mean, we have an extensive network across the country. We work with local partners. We work with local communities. We have over 700 monitors across the country, and we have very strict rules in terms of how our distributions are delivered, like no distribution without monitoring and no assistance without an assessment. And these are processes that we've developed over the year.
Our reporter also told us the situation's only going to get worse. From where you're sitting, how would you analyse the situation now?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're not seeing the signs that we need to see for a recovery. The harvest this year was not as good as we hoped because you still have, in some areas, back-to-back drought, and the economic crisis continues, and the situation continues to deteriorate. And the longer an economic crisis goes on, the worse it's getting for the people. We're facing into another winter, and this is the second winter. The capacity, the reserves of households are completely exhausted, and many households have just untenable levels of debt.
The World Food Programme's Mary-Ellen McGroarty there on the dire situation in Afghanistan 1 year on under the Taliban's rule. Thank you.